This last week has been very eventful, and we'll have a lot to talk about tonight. Before we begin, I do want to say a couple of things about the two protesters who were arrested yesterday. If anyone has more concrete information, it would be great to hear. As far as I understand, Jesse Cruiser was released at 4 p.m. today. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong. And Sarah Abruna is still in jail. The police actions were ugly and unnecessary, but they cannot overshadow yesterday's powerful display of unity from students and alumni. While many of us hold different visions for the future of the school, as a union, we are creative enough, brilliant enough to be joined in a spirit of common purpose. Yesterday's protest and Tuesday's announcement to charge tuition at the master's level puts the importance of tonight's summit into greater relief. It reminds us that the scope of the conversation within Cooper Union includes not only what decisions should be made, but how they should be made. At stake are the priorities of the college, but more fundamentally, its definition. This is perhaps why the president has sought to channel Peter Cooper. To invoke the founder is to make claim to the foundations of the college. That is to say, its definition, its meaning, and its boundaries. The president is gracious enough to be here tonight, and he will have a chance to ask the first question after our panel discussion. Thank you for coming. How do we define Cooper Union, and how do we define its future? How does the community act now, and how do we move forward? We have a booklet that is a collection of ambitious answers to that question. The Way Forward is a testament to 6 months of dedicated work by faculty, students, alumni, and staff, whose proposed initiatives outline an alternative direction for Cooper Union. I want to thank all of the amazing people who helped shape this book. Copies will be available for free after the event, and the PDF is online at friendsofcooperunion.org. Tonight we are honored to bring together some of the people who know Cooper Union best. The distinguished panelists in our discussion have in one way or another participated in and helped steward this ever more radical experiment in free education. They are faculty, alumni, and students of the three schools, of varying generations and of varying opinions. They reflect what is best about the college, its differences, and its ability to collaborate between those differences. Our panel includes Day Gleason, Associate Professor and Academic Advisor, as well as a beloved professor in the School of Art since 1985. John Leeper, former President of the Cooper Union Alumni Association and 2012. Secretary Treasurer, there you go, have it. John Leeper will have a lot to say tonight. 2012 Alumni of the Year, and he helped on the Way Forward document in the financial section. Toby Cumberbatch, a professor in the Electrical Engineering Department and founder of the Center for Sustainable Engineering, Architecture, and Art, Materials, Manufacturing, and Minimalism. He has a wonderful testimonial in the Way Forward document. Latia Perda, a writer who has taught as an adjunct professor in the School of Art and the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, and who authored the Brooklyn Rail article, Why Cooper Union Matters. Sangu Iyer, a writer and engineering graduate from the Chemical Engineering Department in 1999. David Gersten, professor in the School of Architecture and 1991 alumnus of the School of Architecture. Tom Synott, former chief economist for the U.S. Trust and adjunct professor in the School of Engineering. Alan Lundgaard, junior and student council president in the School of Art. Andrew Leader, a student in the School of Engineering and one of the organizers of the 100% participation student donation drive. Sarah Crow, a senior in the School of Art and representative to the President's Revenue Task Force. Yuri Maznij, adjunct professor in the School of Art. Richard Stock, a professor in electrical engineering and faculty union president. Adriana Farmiga, alumna in the School of Art and programming director at La Mama Gallery. Karina Tipton, graduate of Civil Engineering, 1999. And last but certainly not least, Peter Buckley, professor in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences and historian of the Cooper Union. Before our panel discussion begins, I have the distinct pleasure to introduce my friend Alan Lundgaard, Junior and Student Council President in the School of Art. Alan, who has been active in his opposition to the debilitating effects of student loan debt, will give perspective to our conversation tonight. From the beginning of this community-wide dialogue, Alan has been an inspiring advocate for Cooper Union, for unity, and for empowering students to take claim of the school. Please give a warm, warm welcome to Alan Lundgaard.
Hi, everyone. I've lost my voice due to yesterday's events. So, Morgan Vo has graciously offered to read these words. So, Morgan.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Alan Lundgaard, and I'm a junior in the School of Art and member of the Student Council. Firstly, I apologize that the person reading this is not I. Having lost my voice at yesterday's protest, my friend Morgan has so generously offered to make my statement for me on short notice. Thank you, Morgan. I must say, to be standing here facing an audience of my friends and teachers, many of whom I consider family, feels incredibly unnatural. Having been on the other side of this auditorium countless times before, I'm prompted to wonder why we must now address each other as though we do not speak daily in the halls, casually at evening events, or intimately in our leisure. On a typical day in the classroom, we may find ourselves delivering these same sentiments among a group of peers, certainly not talking at our peers from a position of authority, but with and surrounded by each other, because our community is a school of equals. That we must now stand and address each other in such a directional manner, instead of speaking eye to eye, shows a great disruption within our community, indicative of the seriousness of this crisis. As a student, I'd like to speak to my peers about what I believe our role to be in the coming months. We hold a unique and privileged position. We are the alarms of this institution, and it is our duty to keep each other and the public well informed about what happens within these walls. We have the rare permission to be uncertain and vocally so. We have the freedom to not just dream of the most optimistic outcomes, but to act on them creatively and intelligently. Our strategies are numerous and equally valid, and we must pursue resistance as vehemently as possible. In facing this crisis, we must both demand and enact more open communication and better transparency. Only the greater public has the ability to hold those who have betrayed us accountable. It is our duty to keep the public up to date, informed, and invested in what is happening at Cooper, and this we can do. Publicity will help us to deliver the truth about this situation to those that are outside of it, and demonstrations of creativity and optimism will bring us the invaluable opportunity of being heard. Our nonviolent resistance will not go unnoticed and will provide us a necessary link to the public at large. To quote Percy Shelley, "Ye are many, they are few." We cannot forget we are the sole bearers of our school's worth. Our education, if it is to be understood as the primary goal of this institution, should be prioritized above all other concern and self-interest, bureaucratic or otherwise. We are not, as has been callously expressed by the administration, an investment for this school. This school is an investment in an incredible ideal, and we must be its vocal protectors. We know the value of the Cooper Union, but does the public? Will it matter that a small private college of 918 students, historically tuition-free, may be charging for its programs after 110 years? Given the utter disaster of higher education in this country, it will come as no surprise to some, but to many it will signal a national systemic failure. Our problems will exemplify the country's inability to provide for its citizens an education unencumbered by the barriers of class, privilege, or wealth. And this will show that in our society, the idea of educational value has been displaced, taken from the minds of the student, and placed into the hands of the private loan industry. We've heard the figures. Tuition rates have increased 600% since 1980. 2/3 of student graduates from four-year colleges are in debt. Student loan debt has surpassed credit card and auto insurance debt and is not only largely ignored by politicians and press, but actively exploited by third-party, for-profit lenders like Sallie Mae. A national crisis is looming. The bubble will burst, and we're guarded only because we've received Peter Cooper's gift of a tuition-free education. This is a problem for our generation, and it must be addressed. We must celebrate and preserve the model that this school has sustained for over a century. We must make it clear that it is not the unique ideals of this institution that are built to fail, but the educational disasters that run rampant everywhere else in this country. To the students of the Cooper Union, let's begin together, right here, right now. Thank you.
That was good.
Will somebody please start the music so the games can begin?
Hi everyone, my name is Bob Sarah. I'm a civil engineering graduate in 1999. The vice president of the alumni activities for the Green Alumni Association, and I'm going to be moderating the panel tonight. Basically, we assembled this panel, and it's a reflection of conversations online and in print about the Green community. I've asked everyone here at the table to come because they are the experts about the Green in their respective areas. And it would be felt important that their voice be heard. And basically, I just want to thank Alan for the great speech. And it really sets the tone pretty much. And I want to start with Latia, who was one of the first to raise your hands. Who really was one of the first people to get in the program. And I wanted to just ask you, after all this time, since you've written your piece, why are you reading that? And why are we all here tonight?
Hi. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Just kidding. Yeah. Is this okay? So I have taught here on and off since 2006, and I think it is relevant to say that I'm currently on unemployment, although I was offered a teaching position for this spring semester in the art school, but actually get more money per week on unemployment, kind of by a lot, than I would have to teach here. In addition to which, while I'm on unemployment, my own student loans are deferred, which needless to say does not happen when you're taking money from a job. So I actually literally could not afford to teach here this semester. I think that seems really relevant. So I feel like borrowed brain power, which is also seems really problematic just in general. But I wrote that article in the fall because I have taught here and experienced something in the classroom here that I have experienced in nowhere else, and I've taught at some pretty fancy places that people feel like are good schools. And something happens here with tuition removed that just doesn't happen elsewhere, even at a state school where the tuition is supposedly doable for most people. And what feels like happens is that it somehow discussion moves outside of the vein of investment and return. Even just the notion of product, education as a product, feels like something kind of different happens here. And actually, I liked what Morgan, who was reading for Alan, said. But I would also say that in the same way that it seems really important to communicate to the larger community of New York City and the country how Cooper could actually be a model for the renovation of education, I also think it's really important for Cooper students to become interested in the fights that are happening of other students who do have loan debt and who will go into loan debt. And that as you guys make yourselves and your brain power sort of function for students who are going to have that problem and those figure out how to like work with people, I feel like that's as important as getting people to understand how to work with you guys. It seems kind of an essential return. So anyway, I came because I am interested in figuring out how to. I was actually really floored when I was here last. That was the thing that made me want to write this article when the Board of Trustees came to sort of speak to the community, which is a much larger group of people came out to listen to that. But I really felt like one thing that didn't seem to get addressed that I didn't hear was why it was important to keep this school free. And it seems to me like if the people that run the institution don't have an ability to voice that, it seems my question for you guys and for the panel, I guess, is how do students right now, students and faculty members who are really at odds with much of the administration's policies and suggestions, how do you reclaim your education? How do you reclaim what's happening here? And I asked that as a really blank-faced, I have no idea the answers. I have some suggestions, and I'm sure everyone does, but that seems to me the first step. Like, how do you make sure that actually the institution is working for you instead of the other way around? So.
If I may, I just want to ask, follow up on that. Peter, as the historian of Cooper, I mean, the question about that and about how much of the value of Cooper education is worth. There was, I guess, earlier on in the conversations, is there a difference between, or is meritocracy and access to honors in terms of education? And how does Cooper fit into that whole?
Well, yeah.
Okay, is meritocracy and access each other?
I think we use the word meritocracy quite a bit here, but again, I think that, as Alan pointed out, we need the language of what we are to be more readily understood by us and outsiders. Yesterday, when the protest was going on, not all of the public were supportive. As someone said, well, you're a small place, but you know what? It doesn't matter. Big education is taking everybody over. And why? Because big education is being run by professors who earn too much money. I like that bit. But then also, and everybody should pay. If you guys paid, he said, then you'd work harder. Now, I thought that was very good, because you don't know at that point whether to get angry or laugh. But actually, you know, going back home, I thought, well, I mean, this is what we face, actually. That is, the current view of education very much is that it's a quanta of private advantage that you buy, and then you go into the job market, and then you enter into a sea of global capitalism where your particular educational skills can find their right level anywhere in the world. And that's a very nice and absolutely consistent neoliberal vision of what the world currently is. But if you look back even to 1940s, if you look at the Truman Commission, education then was actually about something else. It was about democracy. It was after World War II. Not all education was good. As Truman himself said, some education was by fascists. And so it was the role of the US to train people to be democratic citizens, and that was a clear agenda for higher education. It's amazing how far as a kind of the language of higher education has descended precipitously. I read one article who actually tagged it exactly with the oil crisis of 1973, when people, indeed university administrators, started to talk about how American business had to be reborn in the university. And then by the 1980s, it was the whole business of selling higher education as some kind of ability to improve local economies. I mean, I just think that it's so important to keep a different vision alive. That is, actually, education is about the training of minds. Does that seem cute? It seems very ancient.
It actually does nicely to David's piece about breaking down barriers. And basically, tying it back to the founder of the school, founders of the school. Can we speak a little bit about that in terms of where we are right now? And a little bit about the speakers, the first comment, and how you actually visited in the document.
Yeah, you know, actually it's quite something that Peter just said, the language of education. I've been thinking a lot about language, and the last time we gathered in here, I had written some pieces attempting to comprehend the moment, those moments, through writing. And so of course I've been thinking, how does one comprehend this moment, which is in my mind rather different than those? How does one write this moment? How does one write right now? What's at stake? What are we writing about? Are we writing about rights? Are we writing about right and wrong? About education, community, money, people, place, structure? What's at stake? Can we right the ship? Can writing right the ship? Does writing have the hope of changing the stakes? So what does Cooper Union mean to you in 25 words or less? Well, I couldn't do it. I couldn't write this time. So I started to draw. And I drew out some sketches, some short little vignettes, trying, no, maybe hoping to get it right. Notes, really, some rough sketches and some tender sketches, mostly failed attempts, to be honest, to express the ineffable, no, and ineffable truth of this moment of the Cooper Union, or no, this Cooper Union. So, what's the structure of a promise? Maybe I should call these notes that. Or maybe just rough sketches, tender sketches. The strength of fragility, the fragility of strength. That's way too long. What is this union, Cooper Union? Maybe it's this. Maybe it's this room. It's this collective aspiration to sort it out, to speak it out, to work it out, to write a present tense, ineffable truth, and get it right. To speak up for what's right, even when it's not a right, or not yet a right. Property rights, copyright, civil rights, legal rights, human rights, so many rights, and so many wrongs. Does something have to be a right to be right? Is something a right because it is a right? Aha. The careful discerning of when it's just right. That's what we do here at the Cooper Union, in the studio, in the shops, in the labs, when we write, when we draw, when we make. Peter Cooper, Now he got it just right.
On that point, it's interesting, especially as someone who works so much with alumni. It's very hard for everyone to communicate what career is. But what Alan was able to do so nicely was remind us it is that microcosm of teaching. I'm curious, teaching the relationship between student and teacher. And I'm curious today, with your experience at the school, I mean, what is it like to be teaching at this moment in school, and how does it affect you when we're going right now?
Well, is this perfect? No.
Not this one?
Yeah. Oh, wait back. I've taught here for a number of years, through a number of crises, and I have to say, the one thing that never changes about the career in student and what happens in the classroom, whether it's in architecture, engineering, or humanities, is that when anyone reflects in a publication for students applying to school, they always say you'll work harder than you've ever worked in your life if you go to the Cooper Union. So the premise that it's free and therefore people would work harder if they were paying for it brings us to the idea that knowledge is fungible. Knowledge is not a fungible commodity. What happens in this institution is not about that. What happens here, I always talk about it as peripatetic. The idea that you walk and you talk. And that there are people, you learn things in the classroom, but more than that, this community, how it's put together, why it's here, gives people an access to an inner intellectual confidence of their own life. You can only offer it to a few. It's not that these are the only people capable of it. But for that, when I sit at graduation and walk and see people go out, I don't think where they're going, I mean, where would they have been had we not been here. And so I think that that conversation in the classroom is a constant conversation. I think it's understood between faculty and students that we're in this together. One is more knowledgeable, one is more information, except when it comes to technology, because then they have really should be a lot more information. But that the solution to this cannot be a divisive solution. I really believe that there has to be, in any case that happens in this room, where you can say such things, and in the end, this will be a solution of the union, of Cooper Union will come up with a Cooper Union solution for this crisis. And we'll all have to go up on the dirt wall. We continue, maybe we're not 100% happy with, but I think the Cooper Union has the history of coming up with a Cooper Union solution, and we want to honor that.
I'm going to try to get to her most of I want to ask Andrew and Sarah to respond to that a little bit, because you guys are in the classroom right now, students. Andrew first, I guess. We try to get an arbitration too, I guess. It's fine.
Hi, everybody. First, I want to thank you for inviting me to sit on the panel. I'm frankly not sure why I was invited, but I see it as a big honor and frankly a responsibility to be here. I think that the most important thing about my relationship with my with my teachers, is that I know, sorry, is that I know that most of them don't have to be here. They'd probably be making a lot more money somewhere else. And frankly, sometimes I'm not sure why they want to be here looking at my work, but there is something about the environment that makes them want to be here. And even for the ones who have to be here because it is the only job that they've been offered, consider themselves extremely lucky. They do really, really want to be here. The relationship goes beyond just student-instructor. I mean, it really is friends and family, I feel like. I mean, so many of my teachers, I feel like I can talk to them about anything. And, and somehow they do find a way to bring it back to whatever we're learning about in the class. But I mean, it really is a special relationship. It's not, you know, let me, you know, try to figure out what's the best way that I can get an A to get, you know, my money's worth.
Sarah, could you talk about a little bit about what happened? I mean, I was an engineering student once, and basically a lot of it was the community of students together and how you learn together. And I'm curious on how you guys are getting through this and how it is to be a student of art right now in terms of where you're going.
I mean, one of the big problems with being an art student is that it's insanely expensive compared to most other degrees, and there has never been a market for artists, really. I don't foresee, I would hope that there is no market for artists. I don't think that we really belong there necessarily, you know. But what Cooper allows us to do is engage in a highly critical discourse that's miles above from what I maybe, you know, I haven't gone to any of their schools, so I can't speak for them, but I know that I would, this is really hard. I'm not here to settle with Alan, but there's such a high expectation that we have of each other, and as a senior, I'm thinking about it a lot. Like, what am I going to do when I'm not around these people anymore? Because I've learned so much from my teachers, but I've learned so much from my peers. And everything that I know about art has just been from watching them try and struggle through what they're working with. And that's speaking to teachers also, like the struggle that they have, that it's okay to share it together. And then, the community is so wound together that I'm not, it's unlike anything else. I don't know how else to put it. I'm really sorry.
You're an alumnus, you're actually an adjunct professor here.
Yep.
I didn't mean that as an insult.
Action.
But I think Andrew kind of hit on it a little bit. Why did you come back as a professor to teach here? I mean, as a student, there was a community, now you're part of the community of professors. And then you also kind of link that to that there's a certain amount of, there are a lot of alumni who come back to teach here. And I think there's something about that. Why do they come back?
Well, I guess one important point of why I enjoy teaching is that I'm also involved in making, showing, and the commercial aspect of making and showing art. So selling art. And there is something that is lost, or something that shifts and changes when you take the practice that was very personal and very, in school it's about exploring ideas and sharing them with your peers and removing the aspect of commerce. There is no aspect of commerce because you're just participating in this discourse with your peers. When you leave school, if you have the opportunity to make work and show work, money has a way of affecting the way you might think about your ideas, and I thought it was really important to return to teaching because it would refresh my own sense of what I loved about making art. art and what I love about the discourse that takes place in a room full of people who are interested in making very interesting work outside of the commodity.
The monetization of it.
Well, one thing I'd like to address is that when you're an art student and you're not saddled with $100,000 or $200,000 of debt when you leave school. I actually took student loans when I was a student here because my parents couldn't really help me while I was living and working through school. So I took student loans and I had to pay them off. It took me 10 years to pay them off. That money I used to pay for my expenses while I was going through school. Suddenly, I can't even imagine if I had $200,000 worth of debt. That's a lifetime's worth of payments that you would need to make, and it would completely change and alter the way you thought about the work that you might make and your practice and your daily life. What was your whole life?
That's a clear. But I just want to shift a little bit, if I can do that, and talk about the way forward a little bit, and how what the piece that we're going to be handing out tonight may have contributed to it. And I guess I should start with Richard. And since we're still within the boundary of the school, I guess talk about how we could move forward with the table here.
It's kind of strange because I didn't contribute anything directly. I've been working with these guys on and on for the last few months and put together a nice report. From the point of view of going forward, I think there's, as Dave said, there's some elements of sacrifice that probably everyone will have to make. I think there's the word reinvention is being used. There's going to be some elements of reinvention you have to do. But I think we really need to look closely at what we do and who we are. A few months ago, John asked me for what would be my one sentence in describing where we should go and how we should go forward. And I had a little think about it, and I still think I was kind of right. And that was that we first need to understand who and what we are. And then once we've understood that, we need to be in control of it.
Yes.
I don't think we're all on the same page as a community as to who and what we are. I think the schools and the students and the faculty are remarkably close as to what we are. But I think certainly there seems to be a disjunct between maybe what the public thinks we are, maybe what the administration thinks we are, and certainly what the trustees think we are. And I think we need to try and all get on the same page. Then once we know what we are, I think we need to really put in place processes, communication, transparency, so that we control who and what we are. And I don't mean in a rigid way, but for example, one of the things that I've been looking at over the last few months, looking at financial aspects of things. And one of the things that concerns me, and I think it's been experienced by some other members of this team, is the difficulty and in some cases, unreliability of the data that we have access to. We certainly don't really know what the extent of some of the issues are. So I think that needs to be something that has to be addressed. The last thing I'd say is I'm really concerned about the disparity in what different members of the community consider to be transparent. What I'd like to say is the previous administration was fairly opaque, but underneath it like a sieve so we can find things out.
A good piece in the community document about trust, really, and about talking about just what Richard was mentioning, just basic openness about financials, I guess.
I can just pull it over here. I think. Can everybody hear me? Hello? I would like to start where Richard, one of the things that he talked about. There's a lot of focus on language, and I think language is very, very important. And one of the things that I believe is that human beings can only do two things in life. They can move their bodies through space, and they can have conversations. And that nothing in life happens except through a conversation. But I want to get behind the conversation and actually speak to a word. I want to bring up the word ontology, which is state of being, which is, in other words, what is the inner state behind that we have on our interior as individuals, as an institution, and as members of this institution. And I want to get back to what Richard said, which is, what is this place that we call Cooper Union? And do we agree on what it is? Do we agree on where it will go and how we're going to get there? My primary focus in life is ontological excellence. One of the things that I'm interested in is how do you put organizations together to do excellent, outstanding work. That's been my entire focus in my work in construction. All of the projects that I've worked on have been unique, have been one of a kind. And one of the things that I've focused on and the people I've worked in is focused on is how can we as builders be the best builders that we possibly can be and produce the best buildings that we can possibly do. And that is in a lot of very mundane stuff, which I fear we as an organization have got away from. For me, I am completely dumbfounded on how this institution could run at a deficit and the alarm bells not go off. And everybody here, the all man on deck, we have to fix this ship. So my primary interest is, what are we going to do going forward, and how are we going to set things up so that we can operationally be assured as part of this community that we're actually going to pull this off. I think Jamshed has some great ideas. I think a lot of people up here have some great ideas. But I'm here to tell you that unless we operationally set this thing up so that we can actually pull it off, we are doomed to failure. And I think the pickle that we're in now is completely indicative of where we are. And I think that that is one of the fundamental things we need to fix. We need to fix how this organization, the Cooper Union, actually operates. I think there are many of us that say that some of our students are some of the best students in the world, some of our faculty are some of the best faculty in the world, and the work that they produce when they leave Cooper is some of the best in the world. But I don't think anybody in this room would stand up and say that operationally, Cooper is one of the best run schools in the country. And what I want to say to you is, I want us to be able to say that Cooper is one of the best operationally run schools in the country. That we have the best president, that we have the best finance department, that our board of trustees is the best in the world. And I want to get behind the curtains and pull the curtains open and let the light in and turn the fan on to get the stink out of the room so that we can all see what it is that's in front of us so that we can all collectively fix it.
No, no. Oh, geez. Hello? Is somebody in control? Do you have it? Okay. Yeah. No, because one of my, I guess, sketches had to do with keeping promises, and that maybe it's not about rights, it's about promises, and not only keeping promises, but the promise that's held in keeping promises, the value that's contained in promises kept. So then I have a note that says, should I talk about credit and credibility and credit instruments? Should I try to talk about risk management and promises and the structural relationship between them and the capacity of precisely articulating a credible future that does not yet exist, leading to the mobilization of resources, maybe about Roosevelt or the Lumiere brothers, or Thomas Edison or Peter Cooper. But that's all takes a long time.
I'd like to say we have the comments on the table. Tom,
Sure. Whoops, I'd like you to step forward. Let me lean forward. I'm really here because of the students in the course that I taught last fall. And we ended up with 3 open sessions after they had done their final exams and stuff. And I asked what they wanted to talk about. And one brave soul said, well, I'd really like to learn about credit default swaps. So we talked a little bit about credit default swaps, even though I have really very little understanding of them. And I might add that the investment banking world, in retrospect, had very little understanding. But what they really wanted to talk about was Cooper's finances. And so we had several discussions. We looked at the information that had been supplied by TC and Professor Stock, and we came up with some interesting ideas, some of which people have already talked about, and President Baruka has put a good deal of that emphasis in his latest proposal. But they also came up with some what you might call off-the-wall or out-of-the-box ideas. And one of them was to appeal to alumni who have not contributed with the idea of buy a bulb for Cooper. And what we mean by buying a bulb is buying an LED bulb that costs $40 or $50, and therefore no one would think of buying it, but it lasts for 10 years, and over its lifetime, it's a huge saving. And so the idea of buy a bulb for Cooper essentially says to the alumnus or alumni that we'll put your name on that bulb, and you'll know that it's saving Cooper money every day. The other thought, which came totally out of the box, is to ask Oprah to put on a show here in this hall, and I think our latest ideas will get 100 students to sign a letter and invite her to come here and tell her that she will be standing on the boards where Abraham Lincoln gave the speech that got him the nomination. So what I'm left with is believing that there is an enormous amount of support for Cooper, for the ideals and vision of Peter Cooper, and that our task is really to figure out how to harness that energy and passion to build a financially stable base for Cooper going forward.
I think I can actually talk a little bit about the deficit and some of the ideas that were in the document about the larger loan issues.
Well, I think it has to be a multi-step process. And the first step is to get Cooper's operational finances on a firm basis. And I think the president's proposal goes a very long way on that. And then, having been through 2 or 3 crises at U.S. Trust, we all have to work together. And when we build that spirit, I think it's then possible to approach some foundations and others and ask them to support specific programs. Maybe the master's programs that will be charging some tuition. My favorite boss made the point that if people work together, 2 + 2 = 5. And if they don't work together, 2 + 2 = 3. And that's the difference between success and failure.
On that note, Toby, I wanted to ask you a little bit about you spoke eloquently both in the document and online about the community and everyone working together. Is there a community that we're working on this? Can we get 2 + 2 = 5?
No, yes. I think Cooper Union's lost its way. When I first came in 1994, I think it was one of the first educational institutions I'd walked into where education seemed to be the most important thing. And that was a great leveler. And over the past 15 years, I think we seem to have lost sight of where we are. Other things have become important. I think Jamshed is starting to celebrate the success of students again, but we have these big splits between the faculty, or between the faculty and the students and other people. And I think the only way that we're going to move forwards is if we go back to what this place is about. And really it's about the students. I mean, sure, you can say the faculty have got something to do with that, but the students come in here and they leave. And do the faculty really do anything apart from push them along? Then I suppose we need a bit of administration, right, to keep the whole thing together. But Cooper really is about its students. And if after this, you're going to get a document, a way forward, and the amount of effort that has gone into this clearly shows the passion for the alumni, their love for the school, and their love for the principals of the school. And with all due respect, I think that these latest suggestions about charging for the master's program, I think we're going the wrong way. It has been said several times that money not being on the table somehow enables us to move forward in a different way. And if we're going to move forwards and we're going to come back together again, then I think there have to be big changes. And I think that we need to look at those big changes straight in the eye, and we have to forget about personalities, and we have to decide what's important for the school, Peter Cooper's vision, for the alumni, and for the students that are going to come here, and we're going to be lucky enough to be entrusted with their education. Because if you've taught here, then some of the people that you come into contact with are really quite incredible. And I think that we need to do more for them than we're doing at the moment.
The issue of actually charging
I think before I answer your question just yet, one of the things in this document in the community section is an initiative that's called Growing Down. And as opposed to investing in the higher levels of the master's programs or these other courses, it's how can Cooper better serve the community, how students can tutor public school children in New York City, how we can be better invested in the community. So it also addresses the issue or the seeming conflict between meritocracy and access. So we have this small group of students who are very talented and very smart, but they giving back to the community shows that an investment in a Cooper education is a larger investment in New York City's youth. And I think that's really important, and as what panelists have said, students have said, this culture of collaboration that seems to be fostered here, if we can spread that to the lower levels, I think that would be really great. In terms of the precedents you're talking about charging tuition, and the president has often referred to this as well. In the early years, there were some students that were called amateur students who paid, $1 a week or $1.50 a week to take painting or photography. If you look at the early annual reports, the trustees who put together those reports, they pretty much noted that it was a deviation from the norm of the school. And it explicitly says where everywhere else, in all cases, should be free. And I think that there always has been a conflict with that. And I was trying to figure out how long that lasted. And in one report in 1869, it marked the end of the program, and then it seemed to come back in the 70s, and then in the late 80s, that seemed to be, as far as I can trace, and I don't know if anyone else knows more. So I don't think it lasted until 1902, and I just want to kind of set the record. I feel like this notion of 110 years of Peter Cooper, Cooper Union being tuition-free, that it started in 1902. I think it started in 1859, and I feel like we should reclaim that history. But it seems as though this new idea of having master's programs for charge or continuing education or online courses for pay, in many ways, maybe it is another amateur class. And I don't know if, and it also seems the purpose of these programs is to generate revenue and not for education. So I question what the service, what these programs serve. But if we look at our history, and there's so much wonderful history of Cooper Union, what Cooper Union is, what Cooper Union education is, and I feel, the fact that we had amateurs in the first couple of decades isn't necessarily the part of the history we want to preserve. And I think everything else perhaps is. I don't know.
Well, I think that Sangu's identified the real debate that will occur, namely, do we charge for anything here? Well, the answer is, of course, we have charged for things over the years. We have charged for continuing education. That has not been free. We have charged for things over the years. Hello. And should that principle, which is extended into continuing ed, where people pay, be extended into, as it were, fully fledged academic programs? I think that is the real debate. I think we know there's division on this table here about whether that should take place. It's a discussion that needs needs to take place openly, it seems to me, about what it means for the character of the undergraduate programs that we currently have, which, according to President Jamshed's letter on Tuesday, will be preserved at least in the short term. One of the metaphors that has been used to explain this new hybrid program, where there's a kind of a ring of tuition-driven programs that supports an undergraduate core, is a donut analogy. But of course, the question is, what kind of donut is it? Because at least there are two types that I can think of, and one has a hole in the middle, and the other has some kind of creamy center. Now, so to continue that metaphor, what will the donut be over time? Will the hole appear because centrifugally no, it's not working out. I need Alan Wolf to help me. Over to.
A really great model. I have a diagram that I can show everyone about the donut. So this is Cooper Union. Right here. This is the rest of the world. They all pay money. We're Cooper Union, we're free. This is what the donut model is. What are we protecting ourselves from? What is this actually doing? It's just making Cooper small.
It's a smaller hole.
Cooper's smaller. We're just charging money from people here, you know? Does this not make sense? We're not protecting anything. We're just making it smaller.
I just wanted to talk to, or bring it out to the table. If tuition charge, it actually changes the alumni that actually are produced in this school. I mean, basically, as we were talking about community, we were talking about language, we were talking about speaking to each other, and back to what Alan kind of challenged everyone to do, which is to talk together, work together. Where do the alumni fit into this? Is there an alumni role in this?
Yes. Yes, there is. I don't know how long I've been an alumni, but 13 years. Thank you. The magical thing about Cooper Union alumni is that everyone went to Cooper Union, and so that means that if you look around, you have got this amazing. And the most magical and the most frustrating thing about alumni is that we are all individuals, and I have never run into a more diverse and cohesive community than I found at Cooper Union. And it's because we're all individuals, and so the most brilliant, most grouchy, most caring, most generous individuals you will probably ever find in your life. And the thing that pulls us together is that we all went to Cooper Union, and that is amazing. And so because of this discussion the last 6 months, I've been really thinking a lot about what is special about Cooper Union and what the alumni have inside of ourselves in response to this, at times, crucible that we have attended that was actually really great in the end once we finished. And it was really great at some times in the beginning. And students, you guys are so great. So one of the things that I've done is I've asked some of our more senior alumni, people that graduated in the 50s and the 60s, I've asked them what made them want to continue to be part of a Cooper Union community. The alumni that are really active right now, that graduated a really long time ago, what is it that calls you back to generosity, like with your dollars and your time, and they show up to events that a lot of young alumni would never consider going to, and they just want to engage with the Cooper Union community. And so I've asked them what that was about, and I think what it comes down to is this thing that Sarah talked about, where when you're at Cooper Union, you have a group of your peers that pushes you to do your best because they are the best. And you know that you will be the best if you keep up with them. And you don't try to do better than them because they're the best. And you're just all going to be the best together. And that is amazing. And you don't get that anywhere else. And so that feeling of community is what the older alumni had when they joined the Alumni Association, when they first came out of Cooper Union. If you look back in the old yearbooks that we have in the library, there's these great advertisements where they say, come join the Alumni Association. We have a yacht club. We have monthly lectures and drawing classes, and that community keeps going. And so I guess to pull it all back together, yes, there is a place for alumni. Alumni want to help Cooper Union. We want to give back to Cooper Union. We want to help the students. We want to help you grow in your careers when you come out of Cooper Union, and we want to help you when you're in Cooper Union however we can. And one of the challenges that I think alumni must face right now is how we can remind the rest of the alumni what it is that is so wonderful about being a Cooper Union alum and why they secretly really want to participate. Because if we don't have a robust alumni community, then we just have a building with a gorgeous, great hall that you are in for 4 years, and then afterwards you're out in the real world and you don't have that group of peers pushing you to do your best anymore. So we have to maintain that community so people have that to look forward to as they go forward in their lives as well.
I just wanted to add a small thing to that. You know, I recently was with a large group of young people from 120 countries, and I asked them what was their sort of primary sensation when they were all looking at colleges in the States, and what was the primary sensation that they felt when they were visiting these colleges? And hands down, they said, "Oh, advertising." They said every one of them was completely unique because they had cutting-edge technology and they were completely committed to the environment. They had a new LEED building to prove it, and cutting edge. And they said it just all felt a homogeneous advertising environment. And it is directly to do with the debt creation that you're talking about. And I think, you know, I've been thinking about Central Park a lot as a kind of infrastructure. Not only is it, of course, obviously free, of course, very expensive to maintain. And what would happen to it if you added turnstiles, you know, like, and I don't even mean to the people going towards it, I mean to the interior of it. What would happen? It would, you know, I imagine rides would start to show up, right? Things, right? You'd need some kind of debt creation. to have those turnstiles work.
Can you hear me now? I can answer to that, David. And one of the great things about Central Park, it's funny that I just gave my freshman class their final project was about arts. And the cool thing about Central Park is that it's maintained by the Central Park Conservancy. It's one of the main agencies, and brings me to the idea of stewardship. And that's how I connect back to what Karina was, or the question for Karina. I came in a little late, so I've been staring at the quote on the screen for the last 20 minutes, and I keep thinking about stewardship, so I started writing down notes. Karina was asked her question. I think that how do we as alumni sustain, or how do alumni play out our role? And I think it's an important question. It's a question we all have to ask ourselves. And we have, for example, Rocco and Karina, you are project managers, and you do very well in your roles in the Alumni Association. I think the capital that my alumni base or my alumni group we have significant creative capital. So you go to your resources, and you are the steward. You are the stewards that maintain that park, that you keep it alive in that sense. And I think it fits squarely into the framework of what Peter Cooper asked us to do, which is to remain stewards, and that's a very important element. We don't want to see a Central Park with turnstiles, but we have Central Park Conservancy, which allows us to, it's one of the agencies that allows Central Park to continue to be what it is and continues as free and uninterrupted access to it.
Comment on stewardship and infrastructure. I mean, we know Peter Cooper and Edward Hewitt, but it didn't end in 1902. George Fox built the third water tunnel to New York City. And he also built WBAI, the most radical radio station in New York City, air and water. He understood infrastructure. He understood what it meant. And he, of course, was the chairman of the board of Cooper Union. I mean, that's what his vision was. It was a project about infrastructure.
Put the skunk back up on the table. And here's the skunk. We live in a dollars and cents world. It's unfortunate, but we do. It is inescapable. And we can have fundamental disagreements because we don't have the numbers on the size of the deficit. But we are running at a deficit. We are. It's